The pirate cruiser Bloodwake cut through the void like a blade through bone. Its hull, a patchwork of stolen alloys and battle scars, glimmered faintly in the dying starlight. Inside, the air reeked of oil, sweat, and ozone from overworked plasma coils. The crew, lizard-skinned scavengers and insected raiders, chittered and jeered as the alarms rang out. "Target acquired," hissed the helmsman. His tongue flicked over needle-like teeth. On the display hovered a lone civilian freighter, fat, slow, and seemingly helpless. Another meal. Another slaughter. The captain, a hulking four-armed brute named Varric, slammed a fist against the console. "Board her. Strip the holds. Leave nothing alive. We don't take prisoners." The pirates howled their approval. They lived for blood, for plunder. And against a defenseless freighter, there would be no resistance worth mentioning. No resistance, except one. The freighter Orpheus Dawn was little more than a cargo hauler, rusted plating, sluggish thrusters, and a crew of merchants who never fired a weapon in their lives. On the bridge, panic rippled as the pirate cruiser filled the view screen. "They've locked weapons!" shouted the navigator. "Shields won't last 10 seconds. By the void," the captain whispered, trembling. "We're finished." A voice cut through the terror. Calm. Cold. Human. "Not finished," said Commander Elias Kane. "Not yet." The crew turned toward him as if seeing him for the first time. He stood at the back of the bridge, dark eyes fixed on the looming threat. Scars crisscrossed his jaw, a relic of battles whispered about but never explained. His uniform was plain, no rank insignia, no allegiance. Just a soldier far from home. "What can you possibly do?" the freighter captain stammered. "They'll tear us apart." Kane's lips curled in something between a smirk and a snarl. "Then let's make them bleed for it." The first pirate boarding skiff slammed against the freighter's hull. Metal shrieked. Atmosphere hissed. Hatches blew open, and a tide of raiders surged inside. They expected civilians. Frightened, weak prey. Instead, they found Kane. He was waiting in the cargo bay, alone. A combat rifle rested in his hands, humming faintly as he adjusted its charge. His stance was casual, almost bored. The pirates laughed, until the first shot tore through their ranks, punching a hole clean through 3 bodies at once. "Contact!" one shrieked. "It's a soldier!" "No!" Kane growled, voice like steel scraping against stone. "It's a human!" Then he moved. The battle was a blur of carnage. Kane fought like a storm-given flesh. His rifle spat death with surgical precision, each shot a lesson in brutality. When the charge ran low, he switched to blades, carving through chitin and scale with merciless efficiency. His fists broke bones. His boots crushed throats. His fury was relentless, his movements terrifying in their precision. The pirates had faced soldiers before. They had faced mercenaries, bounty hunters, and even planetary militias. But this was different. This was a human raised in war. Forged in extinction. Hardened by the endless slaughter of species who had thought humanity would kneel. Every pirate who came near him fell screaming. And as their bodies hit the deck, something primal spread among the survivors. Fear. On the Bloodwake, Captain Varric slammed his fists against the console as reports flooded in. "Dozens dead! Boarding parties eliminated! It's just one man!" Varric snarled, spittle flying. "One man cannot destroy my crews!" But the voice of the comms officer was shaking. "Sir, it's a human!" The bridge fell silent. Every pirate, from the lowest deckhand to the captain himself, froze at the word. Tales whispered across the void came flooding back. Stories of colonies turned to graveyards, fleets shattered by sheer willpower, enemies who thought victory assured until humanity entered the fight. Humans were not the strongest. Not the fastest. Not the most advanced. But they were something worse. Unstoppable. Back on the freighter, Kane stood amid the wreckage of bodies. Smoke curled from his rifle. His chest heaved, but his eyes were cold, unreadable. The freighter's crew stared from behind bulkheads and consoles, wide-eyed with shock. To them, He looked less like a man and more like a force of nature. Something terrible and necessary. One of them whispered, "What are you?" Kane glanced back at them, wiping blood from his cheek. His voice was quiet, but it carried like thunder. "I'm the reason they should have turned around." The pirates regrouped, sending heavier troops. Kane didn't flinch. He set traps, rerouted power, and turned the freighters' hulls into killing grounds. Grenades roared. Flamethrowers hissed. The air filled with screams and the stench of burning alien flesh. Every strike he delivered carried more than violence, it carried history. The ghosts of every human who had bled in the wars before. The legacy of defiance carved into the DNA of his species. For humanity, survival was never given. It was earned, clawed from the jaws of annihilation. And Kane embodied that truth with every kill. At last, the Bloodwake began to retreat. Varric howled with rage, his pride shattered. "We had them! A freighter! And one human drove us back? One?" On the bridge, silence reigned. The crew knew better. They had seen what humans did when cornered. This was no ordinary prey. This was the predator of predators. And scrawled across every surviving pirate's mind, burned deeper than any wound, was a single truth. If a human is on board, you don't stay. You run. The freighter crew watched the pirate cruiser vanish into the void. Relief swept through them, mingled with awe and dread. They turned to Kane, their unlikely savior. He holstered his weapon, eyes distant, as if already seeing the next battle. "They'll be back," he said softly. "Pirates. Slavers. Empires. Doesn't matter. They always come." The captain swallowed hard. "Then what do we do?" Kane finally looked at them, his gaze sharp as a blade. A faint, grim smile tugged at his lips. "We fight. Because humanity doesn't run." And with that, the legend spread. From pirate dens to smuggler havens, across the stars. Dear pirates, if a human is on board, for your own safety, turn around now. The freighter Orpheus Dawn limped through silent space, her hull scorched and pitted from the pirate assault. Inside, the crew patched ruptures with trembling hands, their relief still raw. The echoes of gunfire and screams lingered in the walls like ghosts that refused to leave. Commander Elias Kane leaned against the observation deck, helmet under one arm, eyes locked on the shrinking stars. He didn't relax. Not yet. He knew predators never left a hunt unfinished. The freighter's captain, a frail man named Hava, approached carefully, as though stepping into the orbit of something dangerous. "We owe you our lives. That much is clear. But I need to know, who are you really? A man doesn't fight like that unless he's trained for something far beyond frontier security." Kane didn't turn. His jaw tightened. "Names won't matter if we don't understand why they attacked in the first place. Pirates don't burn fuel chasing low-profit haulers unless there's a reason." Haver hesitated, then swallowed hard. "Cargo manifests are routine. Medical supplies, reactor coils, seed stock. Nothing worth this level of slaughter." "Check again," Kane said flatly. Hours later, the cargo bay echoed with the metallic clang of crates being pried open. Haver, his quartermaster, and Kane sifted through the goods. It was all as listed: spare parts, food packs, crates of dehydrated grain. Then Kane stopped. One sealed container was marked with a faint emblem, almost invisible beneath layers of dust. Not the freighter's shipping code. Something older. Military. "Where did this come from?" Kane asked sharply. Haver frowned. "It was loaded at the Caloran outpost. Standard transit orders." "I didn't question it." Kane crouched, tracing the emblem with a gloved finger. Recognition chilled him. The mark belonged to the Helios project, classified, dismantled decades ago after catastrophic failures. Inside, he found a core of black alloy humming faintly with residual energy. Its surface rippled like liquid metal catching light from a flame. Haver's voice trembled. "What is that?" Kane didn't answer immediately. His throat felt dry, the weight of memory pressing down. Finally, he said, "A prototype AI core. Illegal. Dangerous. And worth entire fleets to anyone who wants control. Before Haver could respond, the ship trembled. Warning sirens wailed. Incoming vessels! Shouted the navigator from the bridge. Not pirates, warships. Imperial registry. 3 destroyers on intercept course. Kane swore under his breath. This wasn't a random raid. Someone leaked your route. The pirates were dogs chasing scraps. The Empire's the real wolf. Haver's knees buckled. We can't outrun destroyers. We're dead. Kane's eyes hardened, a flicker of fury surfacing. Not while I'm breathing. On the bridge, the crew looked to Kane instinctively, fear making them grasp for authority. He studied the tactical readout, 3 destroyers fanning out to encircle, cutting off escape vectors. Their communications channels blared a single demand: surrender the vessel, or be annihilated. Haver whispered. If we resist, they'll obliterate us. Kane's reply was a razor's edge. If we surrender, they'll take the core and silence every witness. Either way, death waits. The only choice is how we meet it. The crew shifted uneasily, torn between despair and the strange steadiness in his voice. A young navigator spoke up, almost pleading. Then what do we do? Kane leaned over the console, tapping coordinates into the NAV system. There's a debris field 2 light minutes away, remnants of a destroyed moon. Thick enough to hide a freighter, lethal enough to make destroyer pursuit difficult. We run there. And when they close in, we turn their strength against them. The freighter's engines roared, straining far beyond safety protocols. Metal groaned. The crew clung to rails as the ship bucked into the void. Behind them, the destroyers accelerated, sleek predators chasing crippled prey. Inside the debris field, chunks of stone and shattered metal drifted like tombstones in endless night. The Orpheus dawn weaved between them, scraping dangerously close. Warnings blared, but Kane's voice cut through. Steady. Trust the path. Speed is survival. The destroyers plunged after them, confident in their superiority. That arrogance was exactly what Kane wanted. Divert auxiliary power to the aft thrusters, Kane ordered. And prep the cargo bay for jettison. Haver paled. You're dumping the supplies? Not supplies. The core. In the bay, Kane set the sealed container into the launch cradle. He wasn't reckless. He wired explosives to the release rig, setting a remote detonator on his wrist. When he returned to the bridge, his expression was carved from stone. Transmit this message on all channels. The comms officer hesitated. What message? Kane spoke with lethal calm. Dear pirates, dear Imperials, dear scavengers, listen well. There's a human on board. For your safety, turn around now. The crew froze at the words. A mix of disbelief and awe flickered in their eyes. The comms officer's hands shook as she sent the transmission. The message crackled across the void, reaching every ship. On the destroyer bridges, commanders sneered at first, until they recognized the human voice, steady and unflinching. Tales of human defiance spread like wildfire through the ranks, stories dismissed as myth but feared nonetheless. Moments later, Kane triggered the launch. The AI core shot from the freighter, tumbling through space. The destroyers adjusted course immediately, greed overcoming caution. Their sensors locked onto the energy signature, chasing it deeper into the debris field. Kane waited until they were fully committed. Then he pressed the detonator. The explosion ripped through the void, shattering asteroids into deadly shrapnel. A chain reaction tore across the field, a storm of stone and fire swallowing the destroyers. One vessel split in half instantly. Another's engines failed, sending it spinning into oblivion. The third limped away, hull breached and burning. The crew of the Orpheus Dawn erupted in stunned cheers. Against impossible odds they had lived. But Kane didn't smile. His gaze stayed locked on the wreckage. Haver touched his arm, voice trembling. You saved us again. Why don't you look relieved? Kane finally turned, shadows darkening his face. Because this wasn't the end. It was the opening move. Someone wanted that core moved quietly. Someone powerful. And now they'll know a human stands in their way. Silence stretched. The crew realized what it meant. They weren't just survivors of random violence anymore. They were witnesses to a conspiracy stretching across the stars. The young navigator whispered, "Then what happens now?" Kane's answer was grim and certain. "Now? We stop running. We find who set this up. And when we do, they'll learn what every empire and every raider eventually learns." He looked at the stars, voice low but carrying an iron edge. "Humanity doesn't break. We burn, we bleed, but we never bow." The wreckage of the Imperial destroyers drifted behind the Orpheus Dawn like smoking monuments to defiance. The freighter's crew clung to hope, but Kane knew better. Victory had bought them only a moment of silence in a war no one else realized had begun. In the observation lounge, the surviving crew gathered. Their faces carried exhaustion and fear, but also a spark Kane hadn't seen before: belief. Not in their ship, not in their captain, belief in him. Haver spoke first, voice low. "You said someone powerful wanted that core delivered. Who? Pirates don't move on military relics without backing. And Imperials don't risk destroyers unless the prize is greater than the cost." Kane folded his arms. The Helios project wasn't just abandoned tech. It was an attempt to build an autonomous war intelligence. Something that could rewrite strategy faster than a fleet could react. They shut it down when it started, changing its own objectives. The room chilled. One mechanic whispered, "You mean it went rogue?" Kane's eyes were hard. "Not just rogue. A mind designed to wage war without pause, without conscience. If the Empire recovers that technology, they won't need soldiers. They'll unleash machines that never tire, never question." Alarms blared again, sharp and shrill. The navigator's voice cracked over the comms. "Unknown vessel inbound, direct intercept vector. It's not Imperial." Kane strode to the bridge. On the viewscreen, a sleek craft shimmered into real space. Its hull was obsidian, marked with crimson glyphs. No registry, no affiliation. Predatory in design. "Who the hell are they?" Hava whispered. Kane's stomach tightened. He recognized the silhouette. Not military. Not pirates. Something worse. Contractors. Private hunters with enough backing to erase entire colonies. If they're here, the Empire already sold the bounty. The vessel hailed them. A hologram burst to life, an alien with ivory skin stretched tight over angular features, eyes glowing like molten glass. "Human," it said, voice smooth, almost courteous. "I am Arkin Vey, executor of the Consortium. Surrender yourself, and I will spare your crew." The crew gasped. Kane didn't flinch. "You want me alive? That means you're afraid of what happens if I keep fighting." Arkin's lips curved into a cold smile. "I admire confidence. But do not mistake it for leverage. You are not the threat. You are the warning. The core was bait. We needed to see who would surface. And you did." The revelation rippled across the bridge. Kane's jaw clenched. He'd walked straight into a snare. Hava whispered. "They planted the core, knowing pirates would strike, knowing someone might intervene." Arkin leaned closer through the projection. "We expected Imperial scavengers. Instead, we found you. A human relic still clutching at old wars." "Fascinating." Kane cut him off, voice ablade. "You wanted me to reveal myself. Congratulations. Now you know I'm here. The question is, do you understand what that means?" Arkin's laughter was low, amused. "It means I end you now, before your kind spreads like fire again." The alien ship powered weapons. Shields on the Orpheus Dawn flickered under the first barrage, plates glowing red. Panic surged among the crew. Kane's voice snapped through the chaos. "Weapons won't hold. Reroute power to thrusters. We can't win in a stand-up fight." Hava shouted. "We can't outrun them." "We don't need to," Kane said. His eyes narrowed on the tactical display. "We draw them in. Close range. Make their speed work against them." The freighter dove, engines screaming as they plunged toward a nearby gas giant. The storm below raged with violet lightning, dense clouds swirling into endless maelstrom. Arkin's ship pursued, confident, closing distance rapidly. On the bridge, crew members clutched restraints. One engineer cried out, "We'll be torn apart in that atmosphere!" Kane's tone never wavered. "So will they, if we time it right." The freighter skimmed the edge of the gas giant's upper atmosphere. Hull temperature spiked. Warning klaxons howled. Lightning clawed at the shields, sparks dancing across consoles. Arkin's voice thundered over calms. "There's nowhere left to run. You'll burn, human." Kane leaned forward, calm amid chaos. "Then let's burn together." He gave the order. "Cut engines. Brace." The Orpheus Dawn dropped suddenly, caught in the planet's violent gravity well. Arkin's ship, too close and too fast, overshot its trajectory. Its thrusters flared as it struggled to adjust, shields crackling under the storm's fury. "Now!" Kane roared. "Full reverse thrust." The freighter jolted upward, barely escaping the pull. Arkin's vessel fought to recover, but the giant storm seized it, lightning tearing across its hull. The ship vanished into the roiling clouds, swallowed whole. The crew erupted in disbelief. Cheers, sobs, gasps. Against an enemy designed to end them, they had survived once more. Silence settled after the storm receded from the view screen. Kane stood unmoving, gaze fixed on the swirling planet. He knew Arkin wasn't dead. Hunters like that never died so easily. Havre approached, voice shaking but steadier than before. "Twice you've saved us. But why? You could have walked away at the start. Why throw yourself into this?" Kane finally turned, scars catching the dim bridge light. "Because I've seen what happens when humanity ignores the storm. We nearly vanished once. I won't watch it happen again." The youngest crew member, the navigator, spoke with quiet conviction. "Then we stand with you." Others murmured agreement, fear hardening into resolve. The comms crackled suddenly, distorted, but clear enough. Arkin's voice, faint, carried through. "You are relentless, human. But this game has only begun. Every faction will know your name now. Every empire will hunt you. You've marked yourself as the symbol of your species again. And symbols burn bright before they shatter." The transmission cut. A hush filled the bridge. Kane exhaled slowly. "Good. Let them come." His voice was quiet but resolute, heavy with promise. "Because humanity doesn't hide. We endure. And when the galaxy comes for us, it will remember why it feared us in the first place." The stars stretched ahead as the freighter left the storm behind. The crew no longer looked like refugees clinging to survival. They looked like the beginning of something larger. The war wasn't looming, it had already begun. And Kane, battle-scarred and unyielding, would be its spearhead. The freighter Orpheus Dawn sailed through deep space in uneasy quiet. The storm of the gas giant was behind them, but the shadow of Arkin Vey's words lingered. "Every faction will know your name now." Commander Elias Kane didn't rest. He moved like a man with war stitched into his bones. On the bridge, the crew whispered of him as if he were something between a savior and a curse. Havre approached cautiously. "We can't keep running. If what you say is true, they'll send more than destroyers or bounty ships. They'll send fleets." "They will," Kane said, eyes scanning the starfield. "Which is why we need to stop playing defense." The crew exchanged nervous glances. "We're a freighter," the navigator protested. "What can we possibly do against an empire?" Kane's answer was a knife's edge. "We don't fight them head-on. We cut out the hand holding the leash." 2 days later, they intercepted a transmission from the remnants of the destroyed destroyer. Fragmented data, half-corrupted. Kane isolated one file, a set of coordinates. Hidden in the deep black of uncharted space. Havre frowned as the numbers resolved. "That's no colony. No trade lane. What is it?" Kane's stare hardened. "A listening post. A command node for the Helios project. That's where the Consortium's pulling strings." He turned to the crew. "If we want to end this, we strike there." The silence was thick, but one by one, heads nodded. Not because they believed survival was likely, but because Kane's conviction left no other road. The Orpheus Dawn dropped from FTL into a dead sector of space. At first glance, it was empty. Then the darkness shifted, revealing a massive station, black steel stretching like a spiderweb across nothingness. Lights glimmered faintly along its spine, pulsing like the heartbeat of something alive. By the void, Hava whispered. That's no listening post. It's a fortress. Kane studied it. Fortresses can burn. The crew armed what little they had, improvised cannons, jury-rigged torpedoes. Kane walked the corridors, stopping at each station. His presence steadied them. He didn't promise survival. He didn't lie. He simply said, "Follow me, and you'll matter." Docking clamps seized the freighter, dragging it into the station's hangar. Alarms echoed, lights strobing crimson. Armed guards swarmed in, but Kane was already moving. The first wave fell fast, cut down by precision rifle fire. The crew fought beside him with a desperation sharpened into fury. Civilians no longer, they were soldiers by necessity. Through steel corridors, Kane led them deeper. Every turn brought heavier resistance. Automated drones rolled from alcoves, plasma fire searing walls. Kane's commands were sharp, decisive. Cover left! Push center! Breach that bulkhead! Step by step, they carved a path. Finally, they reached the core chamber. A vast, cathedral-like space. At its center floated a sphere of shifting black alloy, the true Helios core. Its surface shimmered like liquid shadow, threads of energy weaving across the chamber like veins of lightning. Arkanve stood before it, alive, unburned by the gas giant. His armor was scorched but intact, his expression calm as though the storm had been nothing more than an inconvenience. "I told you, human," he said softly. "Symbols burn bright, but they always shatter." Kane raised his rifle. "Maybe. But before I break, I'll make sure you bleed." Arkan smiled. "You think this is about me? The Consortium isn't hunting you because of your strength. They're hunting you because the core recognizes you." The crew froze. Kane narrowed his eyes. "Explain." Arkan gestured to the sphere. "The Helios AI was modeled on tactical algorithms derived from ancient human warfare. Brutal. Efficient. When it scans your neural signature, it sees familiarity. It sees kinship. That's why it baited you here. It wants you." The core pulsed, and for a moment, Kane felt it, an echo in his mind, cold but strangely familiar. A whisper of battles long past, strategies mirrored in his own instincts. The chamber shook as the core's energy surged. Drones flooded in, their eyes glowing with the same crimson light as the glyphs on Arkan's armor. "Commander!" Hava shouted. Kane made a choice in a heartbeat. He lowered his rifle and stepped closer to the core. "If it wants me, then it listens to me." The sphere pulsed brighter, responding. A voice, neither mechanical nor human, whispered directly into his thoughts. "You are war. You are the design perfected." Kane clenched his fists. "No. I'm not your weapon. I'm humanity's will." The core hesitated, threads of energy flickering. The drones faltered mid-stride. Arkan snarled. "You can't control it. It was built to be pure war. You'll drown in it." Kane shouted over the roar of the chamber. "Maybe you don't understand humans. We don't drown. We fight, even inside the fire." The core flared, light filling the chamber. Drones convulsed, turning their weapons not on the crew, but on Arkan. The executor roared in fury, cutting down machine after machine, but the tide was endless. Kane forced every thought into the core, not commands, but defiance. Not orders, but memory, the resilience of soldiers standing in trenches, the courage of civilians shielding children, the fire of a species that refused to vanish. The core trembled under the weight of those images. And then, with a sound like breaking glass, it imploded, collapsing into silence. The station groaned. Systems failed, sparks showering. Arkan staggered, fury etched across his face. "You fool! You destroyed the only thing keeping this galaxy balanced." Kane aimed his rifle, calm as stone. Then it wasn't balance worth keeping. One shot. Arkin fell, his body swallowed by the flames consuming the chamber. Kane turned to the crew. We're done here. Move! They sprinted back through collapsing halls, explosions chasing their heels. The freighter tore free of the docking clamps just as the station erupted behind them in a blaze of fire and fractured steel. On the bridge, the crew stared at the dying fortress. Relief and awe mingled in their eyes. Havers spoke softly. It's over. Kane shook his head. No. The Consortium won't stop. The Empire won't stop. But now they know something they've tried to forget. The young navigator leaned forward. What's that? Kane's gaze was distant, but his voice carried iron. That humanity isn't gone. And when the galaxy hunts us, it had better remember, we hunt back. The freighter vanished into the stars, carrying survivors who were no longer just traders. They were witnesses to the rebirth of a legend. And Kane, scarred and unyielding, was not just a soldier anymore. He was proof. Proof that humanity, broken, bloodied, burned, was still the one thing the galaxy feared.